It's like been revived and become popular in the last year. Yeah. On YouTube, you have the grandchildren of the Tzedek singing it for like a half an hour straight.
Really?
Yeah.
He's singers from months.
Barry Weber.
Yeah, he just did like a really.
Yeah.
Barry Weber is the one that
this.
kind of like took it out, like this whole new, took the chasana song.
So we're on page 107, in the middle of the page. Chanat ha'edin v'kiddushin, preparing the witnesses and the actual engagement. Marriage. So Tzvi Elimelech Omer, and we've seen this in the previous lessons. The She'im Adam Chata Chet Echad B'Chayav Hu Pasul K'Eid. He says that the Dinah says that if a person did one transgression, he's not really kosher as a witness. Im kein echt nimtza edim ksherim. So how do we ever find witnesses that are reliable, that are kosher? Ela shachatan v'kala notnim k'tzat miyom ha'kippurim shalahem la'edim. So we know that the day of the wedding is like Yom Kippur for the chatan and the kala. So they're sharing their Yom Kippur with the witnesses. V'kachem gam mashlimim. V'kachem gam meshamlim la'edim al avodatam ka'edim. So in a sort of sense, they're paying the witnesses for being witnesses, so to speak. B'derech klal lahotzi hachuppah lo meshamlim la'edim. To make a chuppah, you don't pay the witnesses. So he's just saying that, like the fact that they're being forgiven, that is like the Yom Kippur is like a kind of a payment for the witnesses. But what we actually do is, before the witnesses sign, we actually tell them to do tshuva. And to begin with, if we don't use any witnesses that don't keep Shabbos, that openly don't keep Shabbos, but or kosher. But if somebody's like how do you know that the guy didn't tell a lie yesterday? You don't know. But you just tell the witnesses, listen, you've got this big job here, and you can only be kosher if you do tshuva. So, ואני מברך את העדים, I bless the witnesses, שיום הכיפורים שהם קיבלו מיצחק וציפורה יישאר איתם לנצח. I bless the witnesses that this day of forgiveness should stay with them forever. Okay. הקידושין והנחמה. So, נחמה means comforting. Comfort. So Ka'etu Yom Yud Bet Lechodesh Menachem Av. So this particular wedding was the 12th day of the month of Av, right? The month that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So he says, "Yesh li hagasha she'ir bet hashvatim nimtzaim kan." Have this feeling that the 12 tribes are here. Okay, why he said that I don't know, but let's go on. HaChodesh hazeh nikra Menachem Av milashon nechama. So the month is called Av, but we call it Menachem Av, the month that God is going to comfort us. אני מבקש מכם יצחק וציפורה שתמיד תנחמו את הוריכם. I'm asking you, Yitzchak and Tzipora, the Chosin and the Kali, that you should always comfort your parents. ולא רק את הוריכם אלא את בורא העולם עצמו. I want you to comfort God. I want you to comfort the Creator of the world. ואם העולם יעמוד להתמוטט, and if the world is ever going to be in a situation of crumbling or breaking down, Eliyahu Navi Yomar l'Ribono shel Olam, so then the prophet Eliyahu shall say to God, אתה זוכר את הזוג הצעיר שהזמין לחתונתו את דביר בית השבטים? Remember this young couple that invited the 12 tribes to their wedding? העולם חייב להמשיך ולקיים אפילו אם זה רק למענם. The world needs to continue even if it's just for their sake. Okay, so yeah, למענם, למען, right? למען is, yeah, so למענם is the plural of למען. It's plural, third person. Okay. Okay, so what was he doing here? He was connecting the wedding with the date of the wedding. Okay, understand the most of us have, in a certain sense, tunnel vision. Okay. Like, I just say in a certain sense, okay? Like, for example, if I ask you, what's the date today in Hebrew? You don't know. If I ask you, do you know the date? No. You know the date? You know the date in Hebrew? The 12th of Sivan. See, one person knows. You know the date? Now you know, right? Okay. There's the fact that it's the 12th of Sivan. Are you relating that with what's happening today? Besides not saying Tachlan? Most of us don't. Okay? So what I want you all I want you to realize is that, for example, there were many sichot of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the latter years where he would connect the lesson, the parsha, the date, the holiday. In other words, his view was a very broad view. Understand? It wasn't just that. Okay, now today we're learning this, and it has nothing to do with the date of the calendar. The truth is, it is all connected. But that's very, very sophisticated to be able to see that. Most of us just don't possess that sophistication to see that. This is really connected, and this is connected, and this is connected, and this is connected. You know, one of the things about when you learn Rabbi Nachman and the Kutei Moharan, very often, like Rabbi Nachman is explaining something, right? So what does he say? How does he explain it? He says, well, Hanukkah. Hanukkah is this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And he points out to a number of different concepts, and he's saying, if you understand this constellation of all these points and how they connect with each other, then you're going to get a whole new understanding of whatever it is he's talking about, right? See, Western thinking, how do we do in Western thinking when you want to define something? It's basically the intersection of the X and the Y. You know what I mean? Like it's like this means exactly this and so on. you define one thing by one other thing, so to speak. But in Rav Nachman's view, it's amazing. Like, you sort of like, wait a minute. Hanukkah is, he brings up like 10 different things, right? Okay, so what do you got to do with that? How does that define that? So you got to start to look at it like a mandala, like a constellation. You understand? And try to understand how each of those connect with each other. And then when you see the relationship between all those points, you get this whole other understanding. Okay. So what Reb Shlomo did over here right now is basically just related their wedding to the date, which was the 12th of Menachem Av, right? And he's saying that, understand that being that your wedding is taking place in the month of Menachem Av, the month of the comfort of Av, so I want you to comfort your parents. I want you to comfort the creator of the world. You've been doing Tikkun Chatzos lately? You've been doing the midnight prayers? No, everybody okay? Yeah. Yeah. Huh? You can have the lights on. You want the lights? Anybody? No? We're fine, no? It's better like this. Okay. Seret HaChatuna HaShalem. You know what Seret means, Michal? A movie. Literally, what does it mean? Seret?
It's some kind of a string.
A ribbon.
Not one?
I have, thank you. Thank you.
I don't have.
So what does Sarah mean in this?
He has over there. So the complete movie film. So we're going to watch a movie now. Tzipora chikta liYitzchak harbe lifnei shehi nolda. Tzipora was already waiting for Yitzchak before she was born. Kayadua, לפני שהנשמה יורדת לעולם הזה, היא אומרת שלום לכל החברים. Whenever Reb Shlomo used to say everybody knows, we look at each other and nobody knew, and we understood him to mean that you should know. Okay? So before the soul comes down to this world, it says goodbye to all his friends. והאחרון שהיא אומרת לו שלום, and the last one that she says goodbye to, יש מישהו? Somebody's there. And the last one she says goodbye to is who Ben Hazug is her soulmate. האדם שהכי אוהבים. The person that is beloved the most. Come sit down over here, share a book. ולכן, and therefore, כשתינוקות, right, the last person you say goodbye to is the person you love the most. ולכן כשתינוקות נולדים, so when the children are born, הם בוכים. That's why they're crying. לא בגלל שהם רעבים. They're not crying because they're hungry. הם הרי לא רעבים בכלל. They're not hungry at all. They just have been feeding there in the womb. הם בוכים לבני הזוג. They're crying because they're missing their soulmates. Okay? לכן בתחילת החופה, so therefore, at the beginning of the wedding, of the ceremony, מזכירים לכלה שהיא בכתה בעבור החתן שלה. So we remind the kala that, you know, once you cried for your chassan. Okay, I don't know the source for what he just said, but even if he's just giving it to us now, right? And I told you I was at a wedding of one of my students. This young man is now like a big Talmid Chacham, and at his wedding at the chuppah, he started crying, and like he didn't stop for like 15 minutes, crying out loud, and like, you know, nobody was able to continue because he was just crying, you know, and but he was crying for joy, but like, you know, like he couldn't believe that he found his soulmate, and they were standing under the chuppah. Okay, so, but it's a good thing to remember, like, you once cried over this person. Okay? So he says, Yitzchak v'tzipora, borei olam oseh niflaot, v'af echad lo yodea. Right? God is always doing amazing things and nobody even realizes it. Shene'emar v'oseh niflaot g'dolot levado, like we say in Tehillim, he does all these amazing things, but he's doing them levado by himself and we don't even realize it. Like, we don't have any idea how many miracles are taking place all the time, right? And like I remember when Nuria went to, where did she go to? New Zealand, Nuria? Where was she?
New Zealand, Malaysia.
Malaysia, wherever she was walking in the woods, just wearing little togs, right? And Mamish, like, do you remember the story? She stepped, she like literally, she just stepped over a very poisonous snake, And the guy who was walking behind her came up and told her, we realized that snake was like this far from you, and an extremely poisonous snake. And only afterwards did she realize that this miracle happened. Okay? So this happens for us all the time. Even like, what do we consider miraculous? Generally, we consider something miraculous when it's out of the ordinary. The truth is, even breathing is a great miracle, and going to the bathroom is a great miracle, and when we make the blessing after we wash our hands, and we say, "Blessed are you, God, healer of all flesh," and we do these amazing things. So it says in Shulchan Aruch, what is this amazing thing that God is doing all the time? Is that He's keeping your soul in your body. Because the tendency of the soul is like, what am I doing here? Let me get out of this prison, right? So it's like, this is a pele, it's an amazing thing that God is keeping something something spiritual anchored in a physical body. Okay? So God is doing all these great miracles. And everybody explains this thing about God doing these great amazing miracles, binyan halevado, as to doing them by himself. In other words, they're relating it. Come. What's your name? Eliora? Adina Leah. Shalom Aleichem. How are you? So he says that one of the great miracles that God is doing is concerning Livado. In other words, Losei Niflaot Gedolot, God is doing these amazing things. Livado, concerning the issue of Livado, all alone. Klomar, meaning to say, Binyan shene'emar bo lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. In other words, the word levado, where do we find it in the Torah? It's not good for man to be alone. No, actually, that's not a good translation. It's not good that man is alone. It's not good. It's not that it's not good for man, but that it's not good for anybody. That's how Rashi explains it in the Torah. It's not good for anybody. Why? Because if man would be alone, he might say that God is alone and He's God in the heavens, and I'm alone, so maybe I'm God over here. So God gave man a wife, so he should know that he's not God. Yeah, that's the truth. Yes, it is. That's Rashi. I'll show it to you in Rashi in the Chumash.
Thank God there's only two of them here today.
And the Chama Leibovich, who was one of the most brilliant scholars of Rashi, she points out that Rashi is reading that in the words, because it doesn't say Lo Tov LaAdam lihiyot levado. It says lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. It's not good that man is alone. It's not good for anybody. All you need is, I mean, even though man is not God, there's plenty of people that have caused a lot of damage in history thinking that they're God. You know?
So the word Adam is a generic term, meaning,
Yeah, but
meaning men and women.
It sometimes, but in that parsha is talking about the Adam Rishon. Chava hadn't been created yet.
You also keep telling me Kim Baras Adam.
Yeah,
That's
but
not-
that's
I
but
want-
there's
Mr. One
there's
was
generic there's generic.
Right.
So the Rebbe's coming. Shad, the Rebbe.
Umair, are you going to stand up?
Don't want to embarrass him.
No, of course not.
I'll do it with you.
You don't deny
I'll
it.
do it with you.
It's okay. Let's learn. No, come on, everybody's waiting for the Rebbe. Let's go.
Right.
So you say,
I created a good saying for you. It's everybody's getting carried away. From Moshe to Moshe, there's never been such a man.
You want to share with them? So, let's go on. So he says, right? So, the say niflaot gedolot levado, God is making all these great miraculous things to solve the, in other words, concerning levado, concerning man being alone. Okay? Hanes hagadol biyoter hu chibur ben shnei anashim. We're on page 108, 109. The greatest miracle is the connection, the joining of two people. Right? In other words, it's a miracle that you can get past your ego and actually really join with another person. Now, I'm not talking about, I once heard from Rav Yitzchak Ginsburg the following. There are two statements in the Talmud. One says, Matzah Isha Matzah Tov, one who's found his wife has found good. Then there's another statement, I think that King Solomon says, Motzei ani et ha'isha mar mimavet, I find the woman more bitter than death. Now, before I find the woman more bitter than death. And you have to, before you kill me, okay? Now, so Rav Ginsburg explained a very interesting thing. Matzah isha, matzah tov, right? You found your soulmate, you found good. The other verse is Motzei ani. So who's the subject of the verse?
Myself.
I, myself. Right? In other words, when somebody is looking for a soulmate, someone to become one with, it's great. But when one is looking for a soulmate just to meet my needs, to serve me, it's going to end up very bitter. Okay. Now, the sad thing is that it takes a tremendous amount of maturity to actually be able to be one with somebody, right? To have, or what we call altruistic love. Most people that you like them because they make you feel good one way or the other. You don't really love them. You love yourself, and you laugh at my jokes, so I like you. You're going to vote for me, so I like you. Okay? You're going to cook my meals. You're going to do this for me. You're going to do that for me. Oh, it's a shidduch, But that's going to end up in a real mess. Now, a lot of people will argue and they will say it's not even possible to get to that level of true unity. Okay? A lot of people, because the fact of the matter is that we're naturally selfish. And I don't necessarily mean selfish in a bad way, but we're designed, we're wired to meet our own needs for self-preservation, right? Fact is this, like, it's such an intense thing. For example, one of the things they teach lifeguards is that never let the person drowning grab hold of you, even if it's a kid. You know why? Because they'll drown you. Because if they grab you, they have what they call a dead man's grip, and you won't be able to get their hand off you, even if it's a child. Believe it or not, that's how powerful is the survival instinct. You go into a whole different way of being. Okay, so it's very natural to try to preserve and save your life. It's very natural, and it's very natural to be so self-centered, right? So the fact that you can actually consider the possibility of two people really being in love and becoming like one, that is a great miracle. That's a great miracle that God put into the creation, that you can actually go beyond your own selfishness. Okay? So, when the Mashiach will arrive, אתם תראו את סרט הוידאו של חייכם, את כל הניסים שקרו לכם כשנפגשתם. He's saying to the Chosn and the Kala, when Mashiach will come, you'll get to see the movie of all the miracles that took place for you guys till you got together. פעם אחת עמד הרב הקדוש מרודשיץ על יד החלון עם רבו. Once the Radhishis Rebbe was standing by the window with his Rebbe, Rav Yechiel. וכשרב יחיאל הלך, מצאו את הרב מרודשיץ בוכה מאוד. And when Rabbi Yechiel left, they found the Radhishis crying like crazy. זה היה ערב שבת קדוש, it was ערב שבת קודש, it was on Friday afternoon. שאלו החסידים, מה הראה לך הרבי? So the Hasidim asked him, what did your Rebbe show you? ענה להם, הוא הראה לי את האור הגדול שיבוא בזמן משיח צדקנו. He said, my Rebbe showed me the great light that will come when Mashiach arrives. אם כן, למה בכית? So why did you cry? Because he answered, הוא גם הראה לי את הדמעות עד שיבוא המשיח. He also showed me all the tears that people are going to shed until Mashiach comes. So רגע אחד לפני החופה, השם יתברך מראה לנו את כל הניסים, אבל גם מראה לנו את כל הדמעות. One moment before the chuppah, God shows us all the miracles, but He also shows us all the tears. כמה כאב לב, כמה כאבי לב היו להורי החתן והכלה. How much pain in the heart the chosn and the parents of the chosn and the kala had. וכמה לחתן ולכלה, and how much pain the chosn and the kala went through. עד שזכו לבוא עכשיו יחד, until they finally merited to get together at this point. So קחו את הרגע הזה איתכם. So take this moment with you. והראו לילדיכם ביום כניסתם לחופה את הוידאו של חייכם. When your children are going to get married, show them this movie of your own life. ואני מברך אתכם שילדיכם יהיו מספיק קרובים עליכם. I bless you that your children should be close enough to you. שגם הם יראו לכם את הוידאו שלהם, but they should show you the story of their life as well.
Does this really happen?
What?
That
you see all this? Let's put it this way. It's like I said before. People who have a broad view see these things.
So
See, we started the previous page. Reb Shlomo was relating the date of the wedding to the wedding itself, right? Understand? In other words, you can find one of Reb Shlomo's songs. He says, wherever he is in the world, ask me what I'm thinking about, and I'll tell you I'm thinking about Yerushalayim. Okay. Now I know that he didn't just say that. This was literally true for him. Okay? There's a famous saying of Reb Nachman. Reb Nachman says, wherever I'm going to Yerushalayim. Right? Okay. Now, that's a very high level of consciousness. And there are people who have very high levels of consciousness. There's no question about it. So, I remember when Reb Shlomo was in Montreal, was giving a shiur at our house, and one of our regular guests and students, he told me afterwards, he didn't appreciate the shiur at all, and I asked him why, because obviously it was a great shiur. He says he was talking about things that I couldn't relate to at all. Right? And I imagine like somebody would to come up to you in the street today and say, "Do you realize what date it is today?" And you look at him like, "Yeah, it's the 12th of Sivan." "Do you realize how great this is?" Most of us would just like, what do you want from me? Right? Thank God we realize that Shabbos is great, but for example, we have in the davening, we have Shir Shel Yom. The Leviim sang this a specific song every single day. It's in other words, it's being world conscious of the universe. It's not just about what's in my soup bowl. There was this Rebbe, I forgot which one it was, and it was very, very poor. And Sukkot night, he didn't even go home because he knew that when he left to go to shul, there was nothing in the house yet. And finally, his son comes and he says, "Mommy wants you to come home. We have food." And some visitor had come and was staying with them for Sukkot, gave them money to get all the provisions and the food. And he comes home, he comes into the Sukkah, there's candles, the table is set. He's very happy, makes Kiddush, makes the bracha, he sits down to the meal, and at one point he's eating his soup, and he says, stops eating, and he says to himself, "You're not sitting in your Sukkah, you're sitting in your bowl of soup." Then you lost your consciousness of what's really going on. You're just so preoccupied with the food, right? So you ask me, is this really going on? If Shlomo said it's going on, it's happening. He didn't just stop and talk. Okay, I read a story recently about the Chabina Rov. You heard about the Chabina Rov? He was one of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim in Poland before the war and also after the war. So he wrote a book. I wish I would remember where I read it. He wrote a sefer about free choice. Right? He came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He handed him the manuscript. The Rebbe goes like this, and he says, "Oh, very good." And this rabbi was like taken aback. Like he spent months writing this chaveret, right? And he says, maybe the Rebbe has some more to say about it, some actual comments. And the Rebbe looked at him and he says, "You think I just say things?" He said in Yiddish, "Je meint es sich warf sich mit Wörter? You think I just throw words around?" And this is a big rabbi, like the Rebbe, let him have it, So, but he was still taken aback. So he says, "Well, maybe the Rebbe, can make some comments about some specific points." So the Rebbe looked at him, and he started to recite the book by heart. And all he had done was, okay. And the Chabina Rav said, had anybody told him this story, he would never have believed it if it wouldn't happen with him himself.
What year was that?
I have to
For
find
like a decade?
This is I don't know. This is in 60s, 70s. I don't know. The maybe 50s, but you know, Professor Herman Branover, he's at Ben Gurion University. So he's one of those Russian refuseniks who got out of Russia and so on, and he's a big physicist or whatever his field is. And whenever he would publish work, he would bring it and show it to the Rebbe. Okay. He brings this big document to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe is like flipping through the pages, stops on the page. He says, "There's a mistake here." And he handed it back to him. It took him and 6 colleagues, or him and 5 colleagues, it took them 6 months to figure out the mistake. Is that possible? Yeah, it's possible. Don't ask me. I barely passed school, you know. If it wouldn't be for your brother-in-law, I wouldn't have graduated high school.
He doesn't remember. I remember the first
I remember it. Believe me. Okay. In any case, so what Reb Shlomo is basically doing is he's saying to the Chosin and the Kala, there's so much to be conscious of. Okay. There's so much to be conscious of, and he's begging them pretty much. Try to expand your circle of consciousness a little bit more. It's not just your wedding. Your wedding is happening now in the month of Menachem Av. It's taking place. You understand? The miracles happen for you guys to get together, etc. There's going to be miracles and miracles for your children, and so on. Try to be conscious of it. Okay?
Not to go off the topic here, but how does one do that? How would one
How do you expand consciousness?
What I would think was every step I take, why and what and how, you know. I mean, how would one be conscious of everything around it?
First of all, don't try to, you know, like, it's a mistake to try to push yourself too fast, too far, okay? But, you know, like somebody does you a little favor, right? Well, it's very nice, but, you know, when you think about it, they didn't have to do it. They didn't, you know, and they didn't have to be there at that moment when you needed a favor, etc., etc. So you begin to realize that there's a lot of things that are happening that came together. A lot of things came together in order for this little event to take place. Right? On the other hand, like, you know, you don't want to go crazy, like, you know, thinking about like 1,000 different things all the time, because then you're not going to get on with your life. So you got to also, there's times when you just got to focus your vision and keep it on what you need to attend to right now. Reb Shlomo, when he was a student in Lakewood, so the other students, like, very often they would get stuck in something, and there were students who would just come in all the time, explain this to me, explain this to me, explain this to me, and he wanted to learn himself, right? So there were some guys that just wouldn't stop. So he would just focus on what he was learning, and this person would be standing there and talking to him, and sometimes he would just turn to the guy and he would say, "The person you think you're talking to isn't here right now." You know, from this window, the person you think that you're talking to, sometimes you got to do that. And this man, he was in our house in Montreal, and the room was full of people, and he wanted to learn, right? So he stood by the bookshelf, took a sefer off the bookshelf, and he was learning, and people were coming into the room saying, "Did anybody see Shlomo? Did anybody see Shlomo?" And he was right there, and nobody saw him. Don't ask me how he did it, but I'm telling you, I was one of those people. People were looking for Shlomo. He was able to hide. You know, there's a time when you just have to say, I need to do this now, and that's that. Okay? So, be more conscious, at the same time be focused, right? It's like you told me this morning. Like you said hello to a few people that you had never said hello to, right? That's you expanded your consciousness in a certain way. You're aware of the people that you're seeing in the street.
I like to take credit for it, but when you mentioned it, I was very skeptical, and I did that to see if it really happened.
Okay, and you came back today. Baruch Hashem. Okay, Ha'olam nivne mi'ahava. The world is built by love. Yeah? יצחק וציפורה, אתם הכרתם זה את זה עוד לפני שנברא העולם. So you, Chosn and Kali, you already knew each other before the world was created. שלמה המלך השווה את אהבת בורא העולם לאהבת איש ואישה. King Solomon compares the love of the Creator to the love of a man and a woman. וזה לא כל כך פשוט. Now, the Song of Songs, in Shir HaShirim, right, it's a love song, and it's all about Hashem's love for Am Yisrael, right? So he says, it's not so simple. Unfortunately, we cannot say that every married couple is as madly in love as King Solomon is describing in Shir HaShirim. So he says, page 110, אני מברך אתכם שאהבתכם תזכיר לכם את אהבת השם לישראל עמו ואת אהבת ישראל להשם. Okay, talking about expanding consciousness, right? I bless you that your love for each other should remind you of God's love for Israel and Israel's love for God. כמו שנאמר, as it says, עולם חסד ייבנה, the world is built with love. ריבונו של עולם ברא את עולמו באהבה. God created the world with love. So the Ishbitzer says, the Ishbitzer אומר, איך יודעים אם גר אדם בבית? How do you know that somebody is living in the house? אם יש רהיטים יפים בבית, סימן שגר בו אדם. If there's nice furniture there, it's a sign that somebody lives there. מה הם הרהיטים היפים ביותר? What is the most beautiful furniture? שבורא עולם הכניס לעולמו. What's the most beautiful furniture that God put into his world? You want to guess?
Love.
Love, right? Right? That's God's furniture. How do you know that God is present, right? When there's love, then you know that God is present. If there's no love, right, you don't feel the presence of God. Zohava הרבה שיש בעולם. It's the great love that is present in the world. That is the sign of God's presence. Okay? You ever walk into a shul that didn't feel like God is there? Mm-hmm. Right? You ever walk into a shul that you feel God is here? Mm-hmm. Right? You ever walk into a home where you don't feel that God is present? You ever walk into a home where you feel God is present? You know? So, and some people are more sensitive than others. Like this man came from Montreal once, and he sat down where Joel is sitting right now, and he said to his wife, "I'm not leaving." And there was nothing going on. He just says, "I'm not leaving," and he was able to feel like, like Baruch Hashem, like, a lot of learning goes on here, a lot of love goes on over here, and it's something very, very special. And some people actually, they can walk into the room when it's empty, and they can actually sense it. Okay. And there's a story that Master Baal Shem Tov came into a shul, and there was nobody inside, and he said, "There's no room in here." The student said, "What do you mean there's no room in here? It's empty." He says, "No, it's not empty. All the prayers that have been said here are still stuck in this room. They never left. They never left the building." Okay. And meaning to say that whoever was praying there, those prayers didn't go anywhere because there was no connection. There was no connection. One of the when Judy first came to Montreal, so I took her and was showing her around this older neighborhood, this older Jewish neighborhood, and we walked into the shul, and it was like Mincha Marav time, and it was all old timers. The shul was like already 100 years old or whatever. They had a beautiful Kodesh. So I go over to one of the people and I say to him, like, how long have you been davening in this minyan? And he said, over 80 years, he said. I said, with the same people, you davening 80 years? So he said, yeah. I said, wow, you guys must have a really strong bond between each other. And he started to cry. He says, no, we actually hate each other. But we come to shul anyway because we need to have a minyan. But you understand, it's sad. But what I'm saying, I don't know if I believe him completely. I'm sure that they cared about each other tremendously. But being in the same room, that doesn't mean that there's love. You understand? Like, you go into a shul. It's you want to do something special when you go to shul. Make sure you look around and see if there's somebody new there, and make sure you go over and say hello to them and wish them good Shabbos. I went over to one Yid. He was in the neighborhood before my Yanot opened, when we had Shir Chadash, which is now called Rina. And I said, good Shabbos to this guy. And he was like blown away. I said, what's the matter? He says, you have no idea how important it is when somebody comes into shul and somebody new comes into shul and you come over and you say good Shabbos. It means everything in the world.
I don't find that in many children.
So, I told you the story about my neighbor. Yeah. I told you the story about my neighbor. It's written up the first year that we were living here. And it was right after the Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away, Oliver Shalom and Reb Shlomo passed away. And I began to see signs of division coming out. And one day I'm walking in the street past a newsstand, and there's a picture of on the front page of this very anti-religious newspaper of some Haredi guy, and the caption was a horrible caption, and saying these people are terrible. They don't even say hello to you in the street. So my first reaction was, I'm living on this little block over here, Rehov HaNetziv, and I've got this Haredi neighbor. I've been living there already for a few months, and he's never said hello. But right away I felt bad, I didn't want to think that way. I didn't want to swallow that Lashon Hara. But the problem with Lashon Hara is that once you swallow it, even bad talk about somebody, it's very hard to get rid of it. Anyway, that summer, people were coming from all over the world for the unveiling of Reb Shlomo's Metzeva, of his monument at the grave. And we're talking about almost 20 years ago. So at the time the Witts were here and we were here. There weren't very much Chevra family in the community. And so Ramona Witt, Ramona, you came to her class on Thursday. Yeah. So she organized that everybody from out of town would have a place to eat. So Friday night, we were all davening together at the cont'd, and people were being hosted. And Shabbos morning we davened together and we ate the meal together in the old city. So Friday afternoon like it was our first year. We barely had furniture, and Judy tells me that there are 22 people supposed to come back with you from the cont'd. Now we didn't have. I used to go to the makolet. I used to borrow the milk crates, and we had some extra doors in the apartment that weren't being used, and I would make tables, like by putting the doors on the milk crates, and that's how we did it. So I take Netzach and Nachi, and they were young. I go down to the kotel, and if you think that Shlomo davening is long, that Friday night was extra long, because anybody who knew any song and any verse in Kabbalat Shabbat insisted that we had to sing it. And then there were some people who knew a song on a word, and we had to sing that. And there were some people who said, I know a song about this letter, I'm just exaggerating a little bit. But in any case, it was a hot Friday, and it was already 9:25 at night. And my son Nachi is a young adult now, but at the time he was still he was just under 6, and they were running around the entire night at the kotel. And 2 minutes before Elenu, he comes up to me. He says, "Tati, I'm tired." So I picked him up, and he goes to sleep on my shoulder. So I said to Netzach, finally davening was over. I said to Netzach, "Listen, it's going to take me a while to get home. Take all the guests home, and tell Mommy not to wait. They should start singing Shalom Aleichem and Kiddush and wash and start, because who knows how long it's going to take me to get home. I was tired, it was late." So finally, like around 10:30 at night, 10:40 at night, I'm coming down the walkway to our apartment, and standing on his front porch is my Haredi neighbor, exactly the one that when I saw that newspaper caption, I said, "Yeah, they don't say hello, right?" So he's standing there with his Rebbitzin. His name is Reb Steinberg. He passed away 2 years ago. Standing there, and a granddaughter of his, and Shalom. And he says, "Good Shabbos." He says, "Hi." He says, "Good Shabbos." So I'm thinking to myself, wow, like this, Reb Shlomo is so awesome. Like the Shabbos of the unveiling, my neighbor finally said, "Good Shabbos" to me. So I say, "Good Shabbos" to him. So he says, "Ata brat?" I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome. He's even said, he's asking me, "Are you brat? Is that your name?" So I said, "Yeah." "And who are you?" He says, "Steinberg." This is in Hebrew. So he says to me, "Haya lecha oreach." You had a guest here. Now, I was supposed to find 22 people. I only found 21 of the 22. So I'm thinking, oh, there's number 22. So I'm about to say to him, so I say, so where is he? So he says, "Halach," he left. And I'm thinking, what? I live next door to you. What do you mean he left? Right? And I didn't even get to ask him to verbalize the question, but he's already reading my mind, and he says, "Al tidag, hu achal v'halach." Don't worry, he already ate and he left. So now I want to know, okay, where did he eat? He says, he ate by me. Now, I just want to portray Reb Steinberg to you. Reb Steinberg is from the old Yerushalmi Jews who wears the golden kapote, the golden kaftan on Shabbos, and he wears the shtreimel. Okay? So I say, okay, what happened? So he says, this guy came up to him in the streets after davening, and you just got to picture this. And this guy's from, I didn't even know him. He's from Britain. He's a British guy. And he came over to my neighbor, Reb Steinberg, and he says, in broken Hebrew, "Where's number 7 Hanitziv?" So Reb Steinberg says, "It's over here." Now, number 700 Siv is like an apartment building, like a multi-story apartment building lying on its side. In other words, the whole block is number 7. So like there's 12, 14 apartments there next to each other, but they all have the same address. So Rav Steinberg goes into his house, and Mr. British follows him into his house. Okay, so he gives him a seat, and they sing Shalom Aleichem, and they make Kiddush, and they're washed, and they have the fish, and they're already having the soup, and Mr. British is trying to figure out how come this man is not talking to him, because he doesn't speak a word of English. So finally, Mr. British says to Rav Steinberg, he says, "Ata brat?" He says, "You knew we were supposed to go to Shalom Brat, right?" So he says, "Are you Shalom Brat?" She says, "No." Okay? So he's from Britain, he's all embarrassed, and "Oh, I'm so sorry," and this and that. And Rav Steinberg says, "It's going to be a long time till Shalom comes home. Eat your meal." So how much longer he stayed, I don't know, but he stayed for a bit, and he benched and thanked him, and he left. Okay, so now I'm thinking to myself, it was obvious to Rav Steinberg that this man was not him. Okay. It was obvious to him that this man was looking for our apartment. But he knew that I'm not home yet. Right? So he could have told him, "You're probably looking for the brats. They're next door," or whatever, right? But what did he do? He covered for me like he's my brother. Okay. Now I had two questions. One of them was, and like right on the spot, I said to myself, "My gosh!" And these are the people that stupid newspaper says you don't say hello to you. Like, and what would have been if I would have been standing in the street and talking with BJ, and somebody who was obviously his guest, or Steinberg's guest, if they would have come up to me and said, "Where's number 700 Steve?" and they would have followed me into my house, would I have done the same that Reb Steinberg did for me? I hope that I'll be able to say with certainty that I will do that. I hope that I'll reach that level. The other question I had was, okay, if you're so kind and caring, then why don't you say hello when we pass each other in the street? And that I figured out, because the rule is that you're supposed to be learning Torah the entire time. Okay? So how do you learn Torah when you're walking in the street? How do you do it, Meir? You memorize. You memorize the passage, you memorize a Mishnah, you memorize a verse, so that when you're walking in the street, you could be thinking about Torah. So I realized that Rabbi Steinberg is probably learning all the time. And he probably thinks that I'm also learning all the time. So you don't just interrupt each other, right? So I went up to him one day and I said, "Rabbi Steinberg, I figured it out. I just want you to know, unfortunately, I'm not learning all the time." So ever since then, whenever he'd see me, no matter how far away, he would tip his hat and like saying hello to me. And ever since then, he never missed a chance to say hello. He was nifted 2 years ago, but Allah Shalom. But so talk about, like going into a shul where people don't say hello. It taught me a lesson. Don't jump to conclusions. There are plenty of people that say hello and they don't hi, how are you? And they're smiling and they're basically saying, please don't tell me. Right? You're familiar with that? Right? You've seen it? Oh, I like this. I like this very much. I'll call you. Don't hold your breath.
The perfect way how to respond to that, by the way.
Yeah.
Somebody says, how are you? Say better. If they're listening, they'll say, weren't you well? If they weren't listening, they'll say, isn't that lovely?
Yeah. You can respond, or you can say, oh, I'm so glad you asked. Do you have 5 minutes?
Or you touch your heart and say, oh, thank you for asking.
Right. But you understand, you realize in other words, manners is cheap. Manners are cheap. You know, like and in different cultures, they have different mannerisms, and so don't jump to conclusions. In any case, but the reality is that, you understand, we learned it already once, so just review it quickly. The Mishnah says, the last Mishnah in Masechet Brachot, that when the Apikoursim, the non-believers, when they said, those were the people who said, yes, God created the world, but then he put in some batteries and he left, and everything is just happening by itself, so to speak, right? That God isn't on earth. So the rabbis did 2 takanot to remedy that. One of them is that we say hello to each other using God's name. Which of God's names?
Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom is one of God's names. Okay? So let's say you say shalom to somebody and they don't believe in God. So just because you said shalom, they're going to believe that God is here. So the pshat is that you're not supposed to, everybody knows you're not allowed to say God's name in vain, right? If you're going to say shalom to somebody, that means we need to be conscious that this encounter, that you're meeting this person now, is a divine encounter. It's an encounter between 2 souls. And when you're conscious in that way, and you say shalom, and you're bringing Hashem into the encounter, the other person's going to sense it as well. It's going to realize that God isn't just an idea. When there's love and when there's caring, God isn't just an idea. Like we learned last Friday, right? Those holy lips of Aaron HaKohen who uttered the divine name of God on Yom Kippur in the Holy of Holies, what were they doing all year long? They were making peace between people. Okay. So we should be blessed to realize that we should be blessed to be conscious and to realize that our connection with Hashem has to have a real meaning in the way we connect with each other. See you tomorrow, Mr. Hashem.
Could you just quickly, this bracha that you gave, I bless you that your love for each other will parallel? What you just say another word about that?